Well, welcome to the Academy where we discuss and seek a change in long term athletic development. My name is Ben Wellenbach, and I am the dad of two girls, strength coach, and owner of Be Well Fitness. It is my desire to help educate and shift the way our current culture operates regarding long term athletic development. I have known both of my guests today for 8 years as we met through our mutual coach, Will Chung. We are discussing nutrition and nutritional information today, and they both have expressed over the years their pathway to achieve it. Trevor has always loved the outdoors, exploration, and the physical demands needed to achieve this desired lifestyle. Amir has always expressed a love of his heritage, food, and cooking to fuel his training in both strength and conditioning and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. What I admire most about the two of them is that they took action on their passion and that their passion is now helping many people be better in their own lives. As I do with every guest on the podcast, I will pair each guest with a sneaker from the Nike collection that best represents them. The ACG, All Conditions Gear, Mountain Fly Gore-Tex is just as fast and durable whether you are in the backwoods or in the city. It was built to be ready for anything. This is how I see Trevor since the day we met. There is no other colorway I would have picked than Hazel Rush Black Khaki for him because it ties his newborn son Rush into this connection. Toasted overlays in sesame patterns representing a bagel screamed out to me for Amir. One of the very first meals that we shared together was simple yet delicious, a bagel and cream cheese. For us both being from the East Coast, and more specifically the Northeast, a bagel and cream cheese is home. Nike used the classic Dunk model shoe as the canvas to create the Bagel Dunk. They hit all the details from the wood print insoles for the ovens to the tongue labels in white for the cream cheese. Anyone from the Northeast will tell you not every bagel is the same. Amir, like the Nike Dunk, is looking to create something special from something that hits home. So, Trevor and Amir, welcome and thank you very much for taking the time to share some lessons learned for long term athletic development.
Man, thanks, Ben. Yeah, it's fun being on here, man. Happy to see you're doing this.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me as well. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I'm happy that Coos can also join us. Well, for a time being.
Squirrel.
Squirrel. That's all right. Dog's doing what a dog does. So what I enjoy doing to start with is to have you guys and Trevor, we'll start with you. Like what were sports like as a kid for you? You know, what did you do? How what different sports did you play? When did you start? Like what were your early childhood memories of sports?
I was, I mean, I kind of played all the team sports at one time or another. I was obsessed with basketball until I was probably like 24. But growing up, I mean, it was baseball, football, soccer, were the main ones. I did judo for a little, like a couple years, and I don't know, but we were just. I had the neighborhood I lived in. I had like a crew of 10 or 15 buddies, and just every day, depending on the season or whatever, we were playing cul-de-sac baseball or sand football or something. So we are just always doing something with a group of people, and it was predominantly team sports.
Like
But
just pickup stuff.
yeah,
You were like, let's just
yeah.
go
I
out
mean,
and go.
I actually played basketball through high school, and kind of a fun fact, I played on Texas A&M's Qatar team for a season.
All
Um,
right.
when I was in grad school, and so and then after that, I don't think I've touched a basketball since. I think I just got out of it whatever I wanted out of it, and
Okay.
now I'm much more interested in like individual sports stuff.
So like for you, there was never like other than high school teams or like school teams, there wasn't, you know, travel basketball or, you know, like club basketball or anything like that.
Not really. I mean, there were a few like here and there, you know, like summer league stuff, or I mean, I played a couple games with an AAU team,
Okay.
but it just wasn't when I was. I mean, yeah, back then it wasn't like it is now in terms of how I feel like the culture around like AAU basketball and all of that. It was certainly around, but it wasn't. Yeah, it certainly wasn't what it is today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But we
interesting.
did. I
Okay.
mean, we traveled for soccer and not really for baseball, but I quit playing that pretty early. But yeah, certainly soccer. We'd go kind of all around the hill country.
All right. All right. Amir, what about you, man? What was life like?
I mean, definitely a little bit different because when I was a little bit younger, obviously I had moved here from Israel when I was around 7 or 8. Well, when I was 7. So, first of all, the transition of the different cultures. So in Israel, you learn more. You still have basketball, soccer, things like that, martial arts, swimming. But obviously, coming here, there's a transition of the language barrier. And so that was more of the focus for my parents than to like put us into sports.
Right.
So we did play more, street sports, hockey, basketball, soccer, stuff like that. Flag football or even tackle football when we were growing up. So I played a little bit in high school. Like I wrestled. I played a little bit of volleyball in high school. You know, at that point, like, basketball wasn't really like those kids were already way progressed as far as their basketball skills. But I played goalie in a roller hockey league.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that, you can learn at still without having to communicate to other people. So, like when I played basketball, my defense was my because that is effort, right? I can always give effort.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I didn't have the most skill, it was always just effort. I did a lot of swimming, diving because in Israel you do a lot of swimming. So things of that nature. And then once I got a little bit older, I got more into team sports like football, basketball, like competitive, and never really like played baseball that much. My parents tried to put me into it, but again, language barrier. There's a big barrier of not growing up watching the sports. You don't even know the rules. So it, definitely a little bit different, I'm sure, than your childhood with like the traditional, you know, American. Hey, I'm gonna put my kid in like every team sport. So,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
also there was four of us. It wasn't that easy. My mom.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So
We
like I forgot to even ask. I'll come back to that in a second, but what was, you know, like you talked about culture in Israel, culture here, like what was the difference that you saw culture-wise in regard to either sports or play in Israel? I know that you were there for a very
Yeah.
early stage, so like I suppose the best that you can recollect.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Israel since many
Sure.
times, and I have a lot of friends and family. But I would say, like the biggest thing is never going to be sports in Israel, right? Because I hate to bring any kind of politics into a podcast about sports, but that's the reality of the situation is that, people in Israel aren't worried. They're not growing up to be like superstar athletes. They're learning how to be intelligence agents and programmers and things of that nature to help growth in their society.
Sure.
Because when you're a kid in Israel, you start taking tests at a very early age, so that way by the time you get to the army, they already know what division they're going to put you in,
Okay.
right? They take intelligence tests, athletic tests, like all the things that would help the military gather intelligence as to better perform as a military, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, sports obviously is something that's there because it's society. So, like, Maccabi Tel Aviv, who happens to be a very popular basketball team in the Euro Basketball League,
Mm-hmm.
they're very good. But, like, it's a small country. So you have a lot of, the national teams aren't really always getting to the Olympics. Or if they are, it's a very, again, small country. You're only going to compete so swimming, diving, those things are always, biking, hiking, running, things that are outdoor, outdoors. Obviously, most sports are outdoor, but individual outdoor sports.
Sure. Well, I mean, you say I don't want it. I don't want to bring politics in, but I don't necessarily see it that way, and I guess I'll explain why I don't. I think you bringing that in is extremely justified because we're talking about long term athletic development, and you know whether sports are just a tool or an avenue to create long-term athletic development. And both of you are, I think, perfect and clear examples that, like, sports were a part of your life, but you both now are very active. You're both doing things as adults and who have families that I think is exactly what we're looking for. I mentioned in two previous podcasts that 75% of our life is after, let's say, an athletic career through college.
Yeah.
So, like, we're so focused, or we can get so micro focused on the first 25% of our life because that's where we think all the development is, but there's still a ton of development still left. So I guess where I go with this is, you know Trevor not having, let's say, any major structure or like high school stuff. What do you remember, let's say, a turning point, or like, what got you and has kept you real interested in movement, like, up until now? Because you were
Yeah.
what, 20 something at Texas A&M.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean,
Low 20s, and then yeah. I mean, I think the easiest answer is I just never stopped,
okay.
and so I think the people that I talk to that are kind of put on weight, stop doing stuff, and then try to come back to it, and they always start and stop, and can always kind of struggle to make it a habit. It's because they stopped at one point for a while,
Hmm.
whereas I think because I was so active when I was young, I just like the feeling of being, strong and lean for me. And I've just always been interested in stuff. And I traveled quite a bit after A&M, and that's part of the reason why I probably never touched a basketball again, is because I was kind of all over the world for 6 years or so, and I'd be interested in stuff, and it wasn't even about necessarily getting great at it. It was just trying new things. And so that led me to, a couple years surfing mostly in Central America, but kind of all over. I got into rock climbing for a while. Uh, I trained with, speaking of Israel, I trained with Ido Portal and his crew for a couple years. And then obviously we've been with Will for 8 years or so, maybe even longer at this point. But yeah, it's just kind of always a curiosity, and just not having.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, now I just turned 40, and now I've got a business, I've got a baby, I've got all this stuff going on, and so whereas like when probably my most intense training days when I was with Ito was like 4 to 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And now it's maybe 4 sessions a day, but that are like 10 minutes long, just because I'm trying to fit it in, and and I really don't even go to the gym anymore. I've got gymnastics rings hanging up kind of right over here. I've got sandbags that go from 50 pounds to 200 pounds, and I've got some kettlebells and a few bands, and so all my training is really done in my backyard. And I just kind of I kind of wake up and it's just like, all right, I feel good today. I'm gonna go lift that 200-pound sandbag, as many times as I can today, and that may be a workout for the day. Or I haven't been on the rings in a while. I'm gonna go do different ring exercise and just do those throughout the day. Or the last 3 or 4 days, I've kind of turned into doing. I'm gonna focus a lot on just like grip and forearms and hands and stuff like that. And so now I'm just kind of mainly 80% of my training is just doing that stuff, just kind of when I can fit it in. So I train my dog a lot as well, and that's pretty active. And so I don't know, it's just finding ways to integrate it rather than make excuses not to do something. So that's kind of where I'm at, and hopefully that's where I'll always be. And um, you know, it, but the intent is different. It's like I'm not trying to be the biggest, strongest, most jacked, leanest, most athletic or any of that. It's genuinely just at a minimum, like kind of let's maintain as much as we can, and some stuff we'll kind of hyper focus on, like the grip and forearm stuff right now, and just see what we can do over the next month or two.
I think I think that speaks to more people than you may realize, but I also think it speaks to more people than the people may even realize, because we do a really good job judging ourselves
Right.
and being hard on ourselves. And with you saying, you know, I'm kind of fitting in these 10-minute sessions,
Yeah.
most people would go, 10 minutes. What's the point? It's only
Right.
10 minutes. But the reality is, you do a number of those throughout the day.
Right.
I mean, it, all of that accumulates.
Yeah.
And I think, at least what it shows me or tells me for people is that, you know, there's never just one way. There's never just one program. We can slice this in so many different ways as coaches, but also as people. Like I wake up, I feel good,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna try and pump this. But I think,
I think that there's a big issue. There's just too much information out there these now,
sure,
and people
yeah,
get stuck on. People don't even start because there's
mm,
literally hundreds of thousands of different programs to choose from, and then you get stuck in this process of like, all right, well, that's going to take forever to decipher which one of those I should do, and then they're going to choose one probably that doesn't fit in their lifestyle. So then they're going to get in their head about not doing it they're not. What's a stupid example? I do a basketball program and now I'm sad because I'm not as good as LeBron James. Or jujitsu, not everyone's Gordon Ryan,
False
but
expectations.
not everyone's rolling like 15 hours a day like he did. So it's stuff like that. And so I think that, if you can, whatever that is, if you can set the ego aside or whatever it is, I mean, at the end of the day, like, this should be enjoyable. It's your body. You've got to live with it, and just find stuff that you like to do. You're not most people. It's not your profession. It's not your day job. You're not getting paid to do it. So just explore. Have a childlike mentality with it, and if your knees hurt, explore why your knees hurt. Figure out what hurts, what doesn't hurt, rather than not saying that like PTs and chiros and all that aren't good, but there's so much you can do just on your own exploration that will, at a minimum, give you a really nice foundation to go talk to a PT rather than just showing up and being like, my knee hurts, like, do something.
Yeah, because when you show up to a PT or a chiro or a sports med or even a strength coach, right? I mean, they're going to, or you would hope they ask you a whole bunch of questions. And if you haven't explored that, like you're speaking to,
you don't know.
it's helping them help you.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And just knowing what you like to do and owning it. I mean, my mom's 60. How old is she? 67-ish, something like that. And like she'll still regularly go for like 5-mile walks, and like that's what she likes to do. So, it can be that.
We
But
got to put a rucksack on
most
her.
people just need that. Most people need to like walk out in nature, and that would solve like 70% of their problems.
There's more and more evidence coming out on that one.
Yeah.
Amir, what about you, man? What what has kept you? Because again, like you didn't really have much in the way of structured, quote unquote, sports, but you own your own jujitsu facility now. You've been a strength coach for years. So what has what clicked for you?
I think, us being in the world that we're in, we're always looking to improve on small things, like you said, assessing constantly. So I started when after high school, I had traveled a little bit, and then when I had came home, I started training martial arts again full time, and wanting to compete. Obviously, you want to improve your strength, your speed. You want to be pound for pound as best as you can, right? So, starting to explore avenues of strength and conditioning for that. Reaching out to people like Martin Rooney. Actually, I reached out. I didn't reach out to Martin Rooney. I reached out to Frankie Edgar because at the time he was the lightweight champion of the world, and he was known for obviously being pound for pound the strongest in his division, even though he was the tiniest. And so he had recommended I check out this book that Martin Rooney wrote for training fighters, and it was a great book. It helped me a lot. I started to read more of Martin's work, and then I started to, associate the work that he does with some of the work that other people are doing, and learning more. And then I went down of like, being affiliated with the Training for Warriors program and having the Training for Warriors facility. So that really, expanded my ability to learn because the headquarters was in Fair Lawn, so that's not far from here. So I would make like really, it was actually that's where my in-laws live. So when I would make trips to my in-laws, I would go and I would get training with some of the head, let's say, not this guy Rich Sadiv. His nickname's the Human Crane, for example. He's like 185 pound, 50-year-old with a 700-pound deadlift. So like going and training with him, and he would always be working with pro athletes that I got to work along with. It really obviously built my confidence and showed me that, not that I can hang with pro athletes, but, you can still train like a pro athlete. You don't have to be one to train like one. And so that obviously improved my ability to train jiu-jitsu, my striking, all these other things that I was in great condition. And, again, that led me to Will because as I started to expand beyond training for warriors, I found Will, and his knowledge is something I've never came across. And so, again, it's just like, how can I constantly improve and shift where I'm at or improve based on shifting where I'm at in my life.
So, first quick question. Did he name himself the Human Crane?
I don't know. I don't
Well,
think
I
so.
hope not, for his
I hope
sake.
not. I'm pretty sure he didn't.
But the what I what is interesting is that the similarity between you both is that there was just it all stemmed from a level of curiosity. Whether it was, travel for you, Trev, and doing various things from rock climbing to surfing to, Edo, and but for you, Amir, it was more of, the martial route, and just being creative and kind of finding, you know okay, now I'm here, so that's interesting. Where will this take me? And I think, you know it's important to recognize that, because so much of us has lost that practice of curiosity. We haven't lost the ability for curiosity, but we've lost the practice in curiosity. I think, and I think that is almost dumbing us down a bit to this level of non-decision making. So, anyways, let's let's kind of shift a little bit toward the food and nutritional side of it, because with you guys coming from, slightly different backgrounds, I have to think, Trevor, what you're packing for yourself when you're going surfing or hiking or any of the adventures that you had went on for 6 years. Food looked totally different than it does now. Or maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I've always eaten pretty clean. I mean, depending on where you are in the world, the spices and stuff will change, but I can't really say that I ever like went off. I was never like packing honey buns to go to the to go surfing or anything like
You don't
that.
know what you're missing, buddy.
So yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'm. It probably has looked pretty similar for me just throughout of just trying to eat high protein, high fat, some veggies, organic, and kind of as best as I can get wherever I'm at, and as much as high quality as I can afford it at any given time.
But don't you think that played into the choices that you made just traveling around? Because I can't think that some of the places that you were I mean, I've known you, long enough to know some of the places, and we don't necessarily need to go into, like, super detail, but I have to think that in Central America, for that matter, I mean, your choices are kind of slim.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, so like Central America especially yeah, it's pretty the food there is pretty interesting because Mexico to me is like the bar for food in terms of
Okay.
spice, and I just
All
think
right.
like interior Mexican food is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it just kind of gradually gets more bland as you go south. Guatemala's like kind of a mix between it's like a Mexican light in terms of the spices and all that. And then when you get down to like Costa Rica and Nicaragua and all that, it kind of the common food is rice and beans and then some sort of like grilled meat, maybe like a cabbage salad type situation. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean you just eat the diversity of what you eat goes down, but you just eat more of it. So I mean my diet down there was a lot of chicken and then a lot of fruit, fresh fruit, like off the tree.
Yeah.
Your coconuts, your mangoes, your avocados, stuff like that. And so a lot of like just fruit smoothies at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it certainly where you are affects what you eat, but you can still within the framework of what's the healthier option, you can still make those decisions. I
Yeah.
mean, in the Middle East, I was in Qatar, which is a little peninsula, a little thumb off of Saudi Arabia, and they had great fish and seafood and stuff like that. But also the Mediterranean, or excuse me, the Middle Eastern culture makes like great lamb. You know, I tried camel one time out there, didn't love
Oh
it.
boy.
It
Oh
kind of
boy.
tastes like you'd imagine,
Oh boy.
Very
like
fatty.
desert. But you know, but there's still, and then there's a lot of influences from all over Asia there as well. So you can get a pretty decent, you know, you can eat well there too. It's just that there's healthy options and there's unhealthy options pretty
Yeah.
much everywhere you're at, unless, you know, I can't even think of a good example, but unless you're just somewhere extremely remote and there's only like that one thing to eat.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then you either make the decision to fast or you're like, all right, I'm eating this today and we'll suffer the consequences.
I think I'd be fasting if camel was on the menu.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth trying. I mean, I'm kind of the mindset of just try, you know, I'll for the most part try something at least once.
I know you are. That's why
Um,
you're the all conditioned gear shoe.
so,
I
but
am
yeah, but to your question, I mean, it's just a matter of making decisions based
yeah.
on what you have available.
Okay.
I'm not pack your lunch and let's, you know, I'm not gonna like look at where I'm at, see what they have, and then like pack my own stuff if they don't have like something that I want. You know, that's just too, I don't know, that's too much for me. I don't care that much.
Okay.
Um, so
All right. What about you, Amir? From a nutritional side, you know, what drove you? What drives you?
I mean, I love food because who doesn't love food? I traveled a lot. I lived in Mexico. I lived in Alaska. You know, I'm from Israel, so heavy Mediterranean culture. So when I was in my 20s, though, what led me to where I'm at now is having the gastric issues. And then when I was working in Alaska, I suffered a major injury, and I was heavy dosing ibuprofen,
Mm,
and that just completely crushed my ability to uh, digest food. And then when I came home, I had to like pretty much re-teach my body how to eat. Like so, I was slow cooking everything so that way it would break down the tissue because my stomach couldn't. It would have trouble with anything dense to break
mm,
down, right? So obviously, heavy fats were out of the question. Fried foods like heavy red meat, you know, pretty much it was a lot of chicken and rice, a lot of like steamed chicken and rice. And then when I went to culinary school, obviously I had to start tasting the food because you can't cook in a restaurant without tasting the food. And like literally my first day, I can tell you, it's like you walk into this professional kitchen, it's craft, it's a Tom Colicchio restaurant, and there's just a fridge, like 4 foot tall fridge, that's just butter. It's just salted butter and unsalted
that's awesome.
butter. So you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to like learn how to cook with how to event because I can't like they want you to always try to replicate the recipes at home, and I couldn't do that obviously. And so doing that time in the kitchen, I learned obviously a lot of recipes, but then forcing myself to like recreate them in a way that I could actually eat them.
Mm,
And then after culinary school, I was like working in this restaurant and then also working for my dad. And he had like he was like a shipping store in a very small community neighborhood, and there was always Food Network on. So people would come in and be like, "Oh, who's watching Food Network?" And that led to me, being like, "Hey, I'm a chef. I
oh,
like,
but
and they would hire me to do like these Friday night dinners because it's a very Jewish community. And that's how I started to like test recipes and explore like, oh, I could do like Mexican Mediterranean, or taking you know whatever, even let's say Asian fusion and creating like, you know, an Israeli style dish with, you know, Asian marinated skirts, just combining flavors. You know, peppers, for example, are very popular in Israeli cuisine, Mediterranean cuisine,
Mm.
and only certain types of peppers are popular in Asian cuisine. But maybe it's like, hey, like Asian style fajitas, you know, from living in Mexico. It's just different. You know, taking bacon and feta and making like a bacon and feta guac, and that was like a huge hit. Not with the religious Jews, but but like, you know, just taking different flavor profiles from that I've tasted around the world and putting it together and putting my twist on it.
Yeah.
That I've never been like, you know, I always like, you know, I'm into trying good restaurants, but I'd always prefer going and making it myself, unless it's something like, you know, Thai or, you know, very Asian that like requires 50 ingredients, you know, Indian cuisine, Thai cuisine, even some Korean cuisine. It's like you need a lot of ingredients for that stuff. So, but how can you then recreate it at home? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Where you don't need a million ingredients and you can try to come close to that. And that's where you have, you know, chefs now all over social media that do that, which is great because that makes my job a lot easier.
Well, and I think what's interesting is that, you know, both of these experiences have driven you both to do what you're doing right now. You know, Trevor with Man Bar, and you know, you with Buff on a Budget, and you know, shifting toward that. You know, Trevor, is your lifestyle what drove you to start Man Bar, or what was what inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I kind of always joke that it was an accident, but it was just a matter of different parts of my life coming together and made something and people wanted it, and it's like, oh, okay. What wasn't intentionally setting out to start a company or anything like that. It's just I had literally had a bunch of meat in my freezer from different animals that I had killed hunting. And so, you know, down here in Texas, we've kind of got a little bit of everything. So, you know, I had whitetail and axis and aoudad and wild pig and wild turkey and all that stuff. And that's, you know, where I like to get a lot of my protein, a lot of my meat now is just me sourcing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a freezer full of meat. I was kind of in a rut with what I was doing with it. So I was like scouring recipe books and just trying to, you know, incite a little creativity, and for a couple weeks was just like, I'm gonna make something different like every day or every other day whenever I cook. And then I landed on, well, and then at the same time, just from the health and fitness and the nutrition and all that of just my own kind of own learnings and own experiences, it's I was doing the had been more or less following the Poliquin meat and nut breakfast. And so I literally, it's as I always say, there's no overthinking going on over here. I literally had a pack of beef jerky in my hand and a handful of nuts, and just literally was like, man, it'd be a lot easier if these were just together. And so I started making meat and nut bars, dehydrated meat and nut bars in my kitchen, and with the animals that I had hunted. And so I did that. I loved them. I was making them. I mean, after like the first batch, I was like, "Oh, this is sweet. I'm just gonna make this from now on because it's such an easy grab and go." And so, you know, pretty quickly, friends would come over. Hey, try this. I've been making these. Explain why. All the mental and physical benefits of it. And really, we're just talking about high protein and high fat in the morning, or at least your first meal of the day. And pretty much everyone I told it to, all my buddies were like, "Can I pay you to make those for me?" And that just happened enough times where it was like, "Well, crap, all right, I guess people want this, and I've got a little business." And so I was making it for them for a little, you know, several weeks, and they were kind of pushing me to start a company with it. And I made a bunch of samples and took them to people I didn't know so well, because they're your buddies, and
Right.
they're gassing you up and all that. So I wanted to actually
Pumping your
see if there was
tires.
something there. And yeah, it did ended up doing quite a few pre-sales from wasn't even me what wasn't even intending to do pre-sales, but everyone was like, once they had it and I explained why that combo and all that, they're like, how do I get these? Like, where do I buy these? Like, can I pay you now? And so that happened kind of to the tune of about 25 grand and over a short period of time. And I was like, I should probably figure this out. So that's how it started. So
Yeah.
it was very much felt like I was nudged in that direction just through people's feedback and desire to give me money for it, rather than some like grandmaster scheme of starting out of like, I'm going to create this meat stick company.
Hmm.
And so yeah, but it all, back to your original question, it all stemmed from just three things that I love doing, which was hunting, cooking, and the health and fitness, staying
Yeah.
nutrition world. So
Yeah.
You could say it: hunting, cooking, eating.
yeah, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, and then
Eating
like,
good.
so there's a lot in there, and I'll get back to some of it, but I want to know, Amir, this concept of, you know, your your brand, Buff on a Budget, I think speaks to many of the misconceptions, and even misconceptions that I've had for sure, which is, you know, for for me or we to get in really good shape, quote unquote, or look good or eat well, you've got to have an unlimited budget. And you know what I love is, well, I would love to know, like, where the concept stemmed from for you, and what that really, what you meant with it.
Yeah, so during COVID, obviously everything was closed, especially here in New York. And I train at a gym that has a lot of professional fighters. And in that time, we were doing smaller groups. And I knew that obviously none of them were able to get like good nutrition coaching or stuff like that. And so I took the opportunity to, give some advice to some individuals and just giving them a few small things like supplement advice, or for example something like bone broth for fighters. Like some of them immediately were like feeling gigantic difference in the way they were eating, or the way they were feeling from that. And then just taking then the next step and doing like meal prep coaching for them. So doing like a supermarket walkthrough with them while they're on their phone, and then they come home and I would either come over and teach them how to meal prep it, or do like a virtual session. I started to continue to do virtual sessions with people, and then that led to obviously post COVID, me helping this young man that started to work his way towards the UFC, and giving him like food to take home, and again going with him and teaching him exactly how to prepare, what to buy, how to make your meals squared, so you're not just eating, let's say chicken and rice, right? Because you're not a bodybuilder, right? So most people, when they think, oh, I'm eating healthy, I should be eating chicken and rice because, it's going to help me lose weight. It's like, well, no, that's what bodybuilders do because they're trying to remove the fat out of their body. But we need fat because it's an energy source. So just working through, these lessons with young athletes, because even now working with NFL players, it's like, hey, they're gonna make. They're young. They're 20. Their focus was on football, not on strength training, not on nutrition, not on sleep. It's like no, they their whole lives were hyper focused on being a fighter, being a football player, being whatever it is that they do, and that's where our job, and that's where like learning, hey, it's not, you may not, there's a great book that talks about having the right people on your bus, right? So it's like, hey, where can I fit on the bus that I can help along the journey? And so just with my experience with food and having to like help my body adjust to learn how to perform well, whether it's on the mats or lifting heavy weights, right? It's like, how did I do that with myself? And then now, how can I apply that with others? And, just like the same thing with Trevor. It has to be organic. It has to, you can't, you know, maybe it doesn't have to be, but if I think for something to not feel like a job, for not to feel like the stress of, hey, I need to make this money, it has to come from somewhere that you naturally built it over your life's experiences.
Yeah. So for for you, Trev, you know, you've got these meat and nut sticks, right? They are double the size of most on the market, correct?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I was making meat and nut bars, and just kind of long, year and a half long. Story short,
Yeah.
I basically had to pivot, and the nuts are no longer in there, just for manufacturing purposes. So they are. I replaced the nuts with beef fat in this first stick that we have. So
Ooh,
it's a high protein, high fat, high calorie stick. And
Nice.
yes,
Okay.
they're 2 to 3 times the calories and fat of most sticks on the market.
But also 2 to 3 times the size too, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
D-
go ahead.
Really, probably double in terms of ounces.
Hmm.
Maybe double in some change, but yeah, from a calorie standpoint and from a fat content standpoint, it's more like 2 to 3x of most of the ones that I've seen.
So why 2 to 3x? Why not go with like what is on the
What
market?
everyone's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so when I had to pivot to the sticks, it was kind of an inflection or a crossroads point where I was like, because I didn't really want to do sticks for that exact reason. It's just everyone's doing them,
Yeah.
and I had a pretty unique product, and so enough months went by where I wasn't making any headway on finding a manufacturer to help me, that I kind of had this mental, yeah, just it was like, well, if I had to make a stick, what would it look like? And so that's where it was like, okay, I can't do the nuts, but what's the purpose of the nuts? It's for the fat. So why don't we just put more beef fat in there instead of like a lean 90-10 blend, which is what most people do.
Hmm.
Hey bud, sorry. So that was the first one. Another kind of pain point for me was just I I'm not a massive guy by any means. I'm about 6'1", 200, and but I'm, as we've talked about, fairly active.
Yeah.
And I just hated eating. I was so annoyed with having to eat 2 or 3 of the other sticks. Like
Okay.
it was just an annoyance thing. And several of my buddies are the same way, where they're like, man, these little sticks are worthless.
Yeah.
It's like going to a fancy restaurant, and and they give you like a square centimeter of food, and you're like, well, all right, I'm gonna need 200 of these.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that was a pain point. So it was always like, well, why don't we just make a big stick where like one's enough?
Yeah.
So that's again, not a lot of overthinking going on. That's the reason.
Okay, I love it.
I was just annoyed with eating 2 and 3 other sticks.
Well, no, I got news for you. I mean, I think a lot of people are quite frankly annoyed with having to pay for 2 or 3 additional sticks. I mean, it's like because those sticks out there. Not many are just going to eat just one. Like
For sure.
you're probably going to pack a couple in there. So from a stick standpoint, okay, so it's 2 to 3 times the size, you know, certainly calorically more dense, but I want to speak more to the nutrients in the stick itself. These are all like you've curated all these meats from like local sources, correct?
I mean, from the U.S.
Yeah.
And so that they're all curated. Yeah, it's all American source. That
Yes.
was another kind of pain point is that most of the big sticks on the market are importing their meat, and so that there's nothing. So there's that, and then also I've been really into like regenerative agriculture for probably I don't know 6 8 years, something like that, and so of just learning about it, and so when I decided I was going to do this, I wanted to source from American ranches that were practicing regenerative agriculture principles.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's for a couple reasons. Is one, it's just the concept of importing meat for this is just like regenerative agriculture is, in my opinion, the answer to healing our land and soil and food problems. And so I wanted again, whatever amount of skin in the game it ends up becoming, like I just wanted to be a part of that and push that narrative if I was going to do this. And it just made sense from a philosophical standpoint as well of just like, let's keep our dollars here. Let's not import animals. There's nothing wrong with like regenerative animals in New Zealand or Australia or Brazil or wherever these other guys are getting theirs, but let's support the people here. Let's support the soil here. Let's support the economy here. And just if we want that industry to grow, then the ranchers who are like the real heroes of all of this, they need a market to sell their meat. And so if we can be a small part of that, then that's good for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, to me it's something to get behind,
Yeah,
because now more than ever, we need to think as again, Amir, I'll use your words without getting political. We need to think as Americans. I mean, how can we best support us?
yeah,
Um, how can we best utilize really the resources and the gifts that we're given here, right in front of us?
for
And
sure.
so I think that's huge. You know, Amir, we were talking about like the size of the bar, the calories, so on and so forth. I mean, the cost of food has really gone up since COVID. So for the last 5 years, the cost of food has gone up. So based on what you practice and what you have put together, what can we do at home, or even I say travel, but like, you know, my kids will have a volleyball tournament on a particular weekend day or series of days. To me, it seems extremely easy, and it seems extremely intelligent to have man bars
Yeah,
accessible, because that's a healthy option. Because I don't know the last time you all have been to a youth sporting event, but
yeah.
let me just inform you, the concessions at these events are
Right.
like below carnival level. I mean, you feel like you are, a cattle, you know. So what can we do as adults for our own eating, but also for our kids too, staying within a budget? Like what recommendations would you have?
So something like that. I mean, you could pack a couple of thermoses for the family, make a big pot of spaghetti and meatballs or spaghetti bolognese, and put those in the thermoses. And when you're sitting there, game time, right? Get hungry. That's something. It'll stay warm. You could do a nice stew, right? A hearty stew, and keep that in the thermos. Those are always, inexpensive cuts of meat as well when you buy, chuck, for example, right? So if you buy either ground meat or chuck, it's going to be pretty affordable. You could take some burger meat, like, they sell chop those up a little bit. And like I said, you make something affordable that's like spaghetti and meatballs that's going to cost maybe $3, $4 a serving, and you pack those into the thermoses. You're gonna definitely be full because you're getting protein, you're getting some carbohydrates in there, and obviously the meat has fat, like so you're getting something that's quick, not gonna kill you. It's not gonna be too heavy, but you know, and you can eat as much as you want, obviously. And like I said, besides soups, like I said, stews. You could do chilies that are, if you don't want to have the carbohydrates, or you could do like a sweet potato chili, where you throw the sweet potatoes or some black beans into the chili, and again, you're gonna have a complete meal for, you know, let's say you buy a pound of grass-fed beef. Let's even call it grass-fed beef. A pound of grass-fed beef that'll run you about $8. Let's then go with like a can of black beans. It's $1.79 at the most. You can get them even under $1 if you buy them in bulk, right? And then a can of, let's say, crushed tomatoes. It's another $1.50. So all in, you're probably in for $12. And there you go. You got your chili. Let's say a sweet potato or two is another $1.50 or $2. So for under $15, you just fed 3 to 4 people for the entire game, right?
Where do you normally do your shopping?
So obviously for like my meats and my fish for my clients, I will go to the butcher and the fish store because they're obviously paying, so it's not a big deal. But like for myself, Trader Joe's, or I like to buy my meats in bulk, so I'll go to Costco and then for example, like I'll buy New York strip steak. That like, how about this? Talk about the price of meat going up. New York strip steak at Costco used to cost $7.99 a pound. Now it's $11.99 a pound. So like
Fifty
almost
percent increase.
50%. And yeah, so you're talking in the last 5 years since COVID, a 50% increase in your meat. So I used to cook those 2-inch steaks, right? Because they cut them in by 2 inches. So I used to cook those, and then sometimes they would go bad, and I would throw maybe like half a steak or a steak out, but not no more. So now when I come home, I immediately cut them in half. I roll them up in saran wrap, and I'll freeze, let's say, half the pack, and then I will cook let's say, cook off 3 to 4 steaks, so that we have them for a couple of days, and then let's say either the next week or a couple of days later, depending on what we want for protein, I'll defrost the other half versus like taking the whole pack, cooking them all, and then sometimes you get a little tired of having steak every day. So.
I mean, it's not only buff on a budget, but I think it's also buff on a time budget. So, like, can you, what average wise, how long for prep, cook, all of that is stuff taking you relative?
I mean, you can't compare what it takes me to cut vegetables compared to what it takes you. But like there are get
I got
arounds.
some talent, fella.
Okay. So anyway, there are some get arounds because like a lot of markets or Trader Joe's, for example, will sell you a mirepoix already pre-cut, or they'll take the leftover of the mushrooms, the peppers, the this and the that, and they'll make you like a stir fry mix that you can now you don't have to buy bok choy and green beans and this and this and this. It's all there for you. So when you do things like that, yeah, you might pay a little bit more per pound or per serving, but you're going to cut yourself the time. This is where you're asking about
Yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah.
right? So something like that, where now, okay, now I just bought this stir fry mix. All I have to do is take that and my ground chicken or my ground turkey or my ground beef or my chicken that I cut up into strips and put that in a pan. And you can, again, depending, like, semi homemade with Sandra Lee, going back to my watching, the Food Network days, is like, hey, take a barbecue sauce that you really like, try to find something a little bit maybe lower in the sodium and the sugar, or some kind of dressing that is lower in sodium and sugar, and use that as your marinade. You know what I mean? And then over time, you can learn how to make marinades. It takes, take avocado oil, some garlic powder, onion powder, black pepper, salt. Mix that together. There's a marinade for you. Take some lemon zest and garlic powder. There's a garlic lemon, mix that with avocado oil or olive oil, depending on what you're using, and there you go. There's a marinade, a lemon pepper or a lemon garlic marinade. So
Yeah.
you just have to, like you said, work with what you got. So if you have a big budget, like an NFL player, then you can make the fresh garlic and fresh lemon seasoning. Or if you don't, you go and you buy the Trader Joe's or the Target seasoning, Like Target, you want to talk about affordability? Target is probably one of the best places you could buy groceries. Like yogurt, for example, the same Chobani or Fage 5% or 0% Greek yogurt, the big container, $7.99 in the supermarket, $3.99, $4.99 at Target.
Mm.
So it's understanding, like, okay, am I now just wasting a bunch of time and money going from store to store, or where can I be efficient?
Yeah.
Because you can buy ground beef at Target, you can buy crushed tomatoes at Garlic, you can buy at Target, you can buy garlic at Target, you can buy tomatoes, you can buy all these things. So if you're going to start getting fancy and you want like premium cuts of steak and all the, you don't go to Target, But if you're on a budget, yeah, go to Target. Get your ground meat, get your steaks, get your chicken at Target, get your tomatoes. Go and see what Target has to offer, and then build your menu on that. You know,
Mm.
if you don't need that, if you don't have a budget, that's why like Buff on a budget. Hey, if your budget is, you know, a butcher and the fishmonger and the farmers market or Erewhon, right? Like we talk about, you want to talk about unlimited, right? Erewhon is supposedly like this super expensive store. Well, that's why it's in Hollywood, right? So all the richy riches can buy from there. But
Yeah. Big Tex, where, if any at this point, where do you see the evolution of Man Bar going? Is it trying to figure out this bar thing? Is it jerky? Is it travel size? Is it flavors?
Yeah, we'll do. I mean, I'm about 80% done with the second flavor. It's gonna be a spicy, like a hatch and jalapeno.
Heyo.
But for right now, it's the reason they're high fat and high calories is not only is it more satiating, but from a mental standpoint, it targets high fat basically targets neurotransmitters that are associated with drive, energy, and focus. And
Mm.
so, kind of that drive, energy, and focus and satiation are kind of the pillars of my thinking around it. So, in an ideal world, the next 2 or 3 years, we'll have 6 or 8 different meat and flavor combinations that are all high calorie, high fat, in the current size. After that, maybe it makes sense to do some smaller ones. I'm hoping. I think we're gonna be. I don't want to say too much, but I'm hoping we're gonna do some stuff with like some kids and schools and stuff like that. So maybe there's like a kid-size version.
Nice.
Although, I mean, I get messages every week from parents who are saying that they're like 3-year-olds absolutely love them, and that to me is, makes me happy. And
Yeah.
so we'll see where that goes. And as far as if there's potential to do, whether we stay just a meat stick company or we do other stuff as well, it'll kind of all be under the pillar of the drive, energy, and focus. I've got some other ideas, but kind of on the back burner, 'cause just right now I need to make the sticks work. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kind of the current thinking around it and where we're headed.
No, I love it. I think that's a great drive, energy, focus. I mean, it's three things. It's easy. It's clear. It's like stop, drop, and roll. I mean, it's great, but it also like I think it applies to what Amir, what you're doing right now with sauce because you know, like what I guess what's food like during the week? How is it different on game days versus practice days versus off days? Like what is what's the focus for this drive energy focus for sauce?
I mean, there's obviously certain NDAs that I can't talk about,
No, yeah,
but
absolutely.
just in general, like you don't want to have too heavy of a meal before
Okay,
you're gonna go work out, right? You want to leave your high calorie meals for post workout or the evening, so that way your
okay,
body has the time to digest it and apply the nutrients. Obviously because he's got certain protocols with the NFL that they want the players having a certain amount of supplementation with creatine and fish oils and stuff like that. So just making sure that obviously I'm communicating with staff on the team, and because that's really my contact point anyway when I go drop off is the Jets nutritionist. So that way we're constantly in communication of, hey, she sees what I'm making for him, so she can be like, hey, can you add a little more of this or take a little, but mostly it's me and him. It's me and him discussing, and then this time of year we're a little bit more just trying to get back to, obviously he just came off the off season, so
mhm,
his just regulating his body again. He was traveling a lot, so regulating things,
sure.
making sure he's feeling how his body likes to feel when he's working out again, and doesn't want to feel sluggish, right? So then once you get into like OTAs, we start to add a little bit more calorically because it's really hot out. I put a lot more hydration into the meal planning, so like I'll make them hydration packs and stuff like that.
Mm,
Um, a lot more fruit because again he's sweating a lot more, so he's you know releasing a lot more sugar and water. Just in general, just try to make it according to what you know. Obviously, game day you're not gonna load him up with spaghetti and meatballs, but he has his certain meals that he likes, his flavor profiles that he likes, and so I try to stick to that because that's what he likes and it's what works.
and I know he's commented before, but like, can you speak to how he feels when he's eating your food and like proper nutrition? I feel
Yeah,
like there was something said at last year's OTAs, even on like when he was he interviewed on ESPN or something, and he mentioned your name, or I can't
yeah.
remember.
It just he was just working. The Jets obviously have their own nutrition staff and cooking staff, and then they had turned over and upgraded some of the the facility, and he could still obviously during the off season prior years we weren't really working together, so he had noticed the difference from during the season to the off season, and obviously that was a big selling point for him on continuing with that versus
Right.
going back to what wasn't making him feel. Obviously you're talking about one of the premier players in the NFL, so they're not even just by, let's say, forget about skill. He's a very popular name, so he has. It's like he has to live up to the hype, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you reach that level, there's certainly a level of scrutiny and demand, and that we on the outside can't even fathom, honestly.
And no, definitely not.
But what I think is important is that what both you and Trevor have said, and again, you're speaking the same language just in different terms, is the difference that you feel and the feedback, Trevor, that you've gotten from people, how they feel when they're eating the nutritionally dense foods. And I mean, I think ultimately, we're talking about creativity earlier. However, you want to find your fitness, whatever works for you, excellent. I do think that there should be certain, I mean, we're not going to go that route right now, but I do think that there should be certain things or certain boxes that should be checked from a principle standpoint when it comes to fitness. And I think that's really the case and the same in regard to nutrition. So, do you like more of, Asian fusion, or do you like more of you know, the Mexican roots? However you kind of want to slice it, whatever works for you, excellent. I think really what it comes down to is being willing to be creative or find the solution that does work for you, and then the consistency enough to be able to do it, because all these concepts maybe sound great for people, but
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
application and practical. You
yeah,
have to practice it.
you gotta do it.
Yeah, for sure,
um,
for sure, for
and
sure.
I'm not, let me just be the first one to tell you that you know when the three of us are in person together and we have like hung out, all three of us together, we are in situations where we are eating foods that we haven't eaten on a normal basis in a long time, and we're eating a lot of them. And I will tell you, by like day two, by day three, by day four, I mean, I'll get back on the plane, and not only is my body just like wiped from training, but like my insides are wiped. So like I know that life is going to happen. In other words, like I'm not the model or the poster child for clean. The guy in Texas is the poster child for clean. What I am saying is that you know the two of you have provided some great options as to at least start shifting in that direction, to to make choices not only with greater education but easier too, in the way of sticks and stuff. So let's kind of get to, you know Trev, how do people find you? How do they get to you? I know that you're on Instagram right now at Try Man Bar.
Yeah, TRY man bar.
So what like how do people order? Where can they order?
Website's the same thing. Just trymanbar.com. It's just the website right now. It's just the website and Instagram. We may or may not start a YouTube thing here at some point this year. But yeah, just those. Now is actually a great time to order if you're interested, because we just ran out of stock, and so we're running an out of stock promo.
Mm.
where it's 20% off if you pre-order it, and we're expecting to have stock back in probably the end of next month, hopefully sooner, but ideally by the end of next month, we'll at the latest we'll have product in and start shipping again. But yeah, now is a great time if to order if you're interested, because that 20% off doesn't come around very often.
Well, no doubt about that. But I think it's so interesting to say that this even speaks even more to the sourcing of what you're doing, because you're sticking to your beliefs here of where you're getting the product, and I think it's
Yeah,
great.
it's probably not. I'm grateful I don't have investors right now, because they'd probably be like chopping my business. I don't have a business plan really, but they'd be chopping my
Fair enough.
ideals to shreds. But yeah, I mean it's not about building the biggest company. It's just about building one with these certain ideals, and if that means it's $5,000 a month company, or if people resonate with it and it's 500,000 or more, great. But I'm not really interested in like cheapening the product,
Yeah.
or kind of playing those big market games that a lot of them are doing, because it ultimately ends up cheapening the product.
Mm,
And they'll always say like they can compete better at that level of quality than I can. They've got more resources headed that way. So I'll just kind of stick in my lane and see how the market continues to respond, and that'll kind of dictate what we do.
nice. All right, so trymanbar.com. You can go on there. You can pre-order, get 20% off right now,
Yep.
and
Free shipping on all 5 and 10 packs.
awesome.
So
So they'll see all the options there, and how they can go about doing it, and it's a great resource for you, sir, in Long Island. You've got your jujitsu school there, and I think your I think your videos are great from Buff on a Budget. So for folks that are looking for ideas, if you feel stuck, I think the easiest way to get unstuck is to get some vision from someone who's already done what you want to do. So if you go to Buff on a Budget on Instagram, right? Is there a Facebook too?
No, but the Lamdan Strength and Condition, the Lamdan Strength and Nutrition actually has the Facebook, and that has the. I mean, you're probably gonna get me bet. The Buff on a Budget is good for like educational purposes, but
Got it.
if you wanna, if people want to reach out or you want consulting, Lamdan Strength and Nutrition is probably a better way to find me. But
Okay.
either one,
Okay. So
yeah.
Lamdan Strength and Nutrition. All right. Does it come with a chokehold?
Only for you.
Oh, all right. Well, fellas, any closing words, any pearls of wisdom you would like to leave us with today?
Try Man Bar. Because it sounds.
Try me, bud.
I'm gonna go order mine.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm gonna go order
Thank
mine
you.
because I'm definitely gonna put some of that in the cooler.
Thank you.
And I just want to try it in general. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk to the. I'm gonna. We're gonna talk after this, Trevor, because I
Yeah.
got something
Okay.
for you.
Yeah.
I got a good idea for you.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, in general, if this is about trying to help like your gym members and people in your life, I mean, simplicity is usually the answer in everything. I mean, I would look at taking taking stuff away is usually yields better results than adding more stuff. And so whether that's nutrition or fitness or movement or whatever your goals are, it's just kind of simplify it and stick with it, and that'll typically yield. Someone who does something consistently will yield better results than someone who has the perfect plan but is inconsistent nine
Agree.
times out of 10. So,
Agree.
just do that. I mean, you don't have to complicate this stuff. It's get your proteins and fats in, like I mean, from it like 80% proteins and fats, 10% carbs or fruit, whatever, and then 10% whatever. You know, that's probably a pretty good rule of thumb for most people, and usually where I start when people ask me is get your proteins and fats in, be satiated from that, and then if you want to do stuff after that, go for it.
10%
So
pizza.
yeah, I mean whatever. I mean you know, like I'd Reese's,
Bagel pizza.
whatever your vices.
I'm a failure as a New Yorker. I'm not that big of a fan. Pizza's like, come on.
Oh, stop it, you.
I
Stop
could
it, you.
definitely. I take tacos over pizza any day.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Let's go, Tex. I know you're
Yeah.
speaking that
Oh
language.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but you know, I'll go back to what you were saying at the very beginning. Is hey, assess, right? Like, how do you assess where you are, and then what you need to do to progress, whatever it is, strength and conditioning, your nutrition, oh, your efficiency with your nutrition, your budget with your nutrition. It's, you know, that's what like I know for me, like, hey, I'm on the road traveling to the facility. That's gonna satiate me. Like I won't get hungry on the,
Yeah.
you know, I'm in the car for 3 hours sometimes. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you can like if you can get in your protein and fat, I mean that's gonna curb all your like the majority of your cravings and your snacking and all of that because it's like the protein allows for a slow increase in your blood sugar and then the fat prolongs that. So you're not getting these spikes of carbs or sugar or even protein where it's like why you have to eat two or three of the other sticks that are low fat. It's because it's like you get an initial push and it'll sustain for a little bit, but eventually that comes down as well. If you're coupling the fat and the protein, it's going to prolong it, and then I mean that's 90% of the battle, right? Excuse me, right there. So
yeah,
that's I'm sure it's more complicated and dialed in for an
yeah,
elite athletes in the NFL and stuff, but for 99% of people, I mean, start there.
yeah. Trevor, you'd be surprised. I mean, it is and it isn't because most people, even athletes, they don't. Again, like I talked about earlier, they know football. They don't know nutrition.
Yeah. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
why they hire
actually,
people
now that
like
I'm
me.
saying that out loud, it's probably worse for them because they can crush McDonald's and still have a 16 pack and squat 600 pounds.
Exactly.
So, but yeah,
Yeah,
those are my thoughts, Ben, man.
I appreciate it.
yeah.
That's
Ben,
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks for
appreciate you
having.
having us on, man.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
some good golden nuggets to finish with. I love it, and again, I really appreciate your guys' insight, your time, and it is excellent watching the two of you guys execute the passion that you both have. So thank you guys again for joining, and hopefully everybody is able to walk away with some nuggets themselves.
Cool. All
Thank
right,
you.
fellas. Appreciate it.
Thanks, people.